A spacecraft on a critical mission has crash-landed on the moon, leaving the crew in a desperate situation. Oxygen supplies are dwindling, the engines have failed, a crew member is injured, and they're stranded far from the nearest lunar research base. When Dr. Song regains consciousness, she stumbles out of her seat, only to notice water pooling around her feet, a sign of a serious leak. Her first instinct is to fix the issue, but when she peers outside, she discovers the spacecraft is precariously perched on the edge of a colossal lunar ravine. This mission began just weeks ago in the year 2075, a time when Earth was grappling with a devastating water crisis. Sea levels had plummeted, rainfall had all but ceased, and contaminated water was causing infant mortality rates to skyrocket. Food shortages worsened as vertical farms struggled to meet the demand, and even owning pets became illegal. To manage the crisis, the government introduced strict regulations, rationing water based on social class. The wealthiest citizens held gold cards granting unlimited water access, sparking riots among the lower classes. At the Environment for Human Survival Research Center, Dr. Song was working on projects involving plant and animal life when she was approached by Section Chief Kim from the Space and Aeronautics Administration, SAA. He invited her to join a new lunar mission, but Song initially refused until she learned the mission would take her to the Belhai Lunar Station, the same station where her sister had died 5 years earlier. In the wake of her sister's death, the government had compensated Song with one of the coveted gold cards. At the mission briefing, Song met her fellow crew members and learned more about their task: retrieve critical research samples and capsules from Belhai Station, which had been abandoned due to a radiation leak. They were given 24 hours to complete the mission, with the samples needing to be kept at low temperatures. The specifics of the capsule's contents and locations remained classified, raising suspicions among the crew. Right before launch, the crew was surprised to learn that their usual co-pilot had been replaced by a stranger named Lee. Despite the unexpected change, the mission proceeded smoothly until they neared the moon. An alarm suddenly blared, revealing that the docking system was malfunctioning. With no way to reach the SAA, the crew made the risky decision to release the landing module early. The main engine failed to ignite, forcing them to switch to manual thrust controls, also to no avail. The spacecraft crash-landed and slid uncontrollably until it became wedged upside down at the edge of a deep chasm. Returning to the present, the crew hurriedly donned their spacesuits and attempted to open the spacecraft's door, only to cause the ship to slip even further down the cliff. As debris fell, it shattered a window, and Dr. Song nearly slipped out. At the last moment, her teammates managed to pull her back to safety. The crew then exited the spacecraft, watching helplessly as it slid into the abyss below. With no communication to the SAA and limited oxygen reserves, the crew had no choice but to make the perilous trek toward the Baohe Research Station, which was over 7 kilometers away. Not long into the journey, Wang, one of the crew members, collapsed, his suit compromised by a punctured lung. Despite the team's attempts to help, Wang refused, coughing up blood and succumbing to his injuries. The crew left a vial of water with his body, intending to retrieve him later. By the time they reached the station, their oxygen levels were critical. They barely made it inside before collapsing, sealing the airlock just in time. Inside the station, Dr. Song experienced a flashback. She recalled her efforts to decrypt a message left by her sister. The key turned out to be a Latin phrase, revealing the cryptic message: "Find Luna." Wang had once explained that Luna was the station's data storage system. Back in the present, the crew replenished their oxygen supplies and ventured into the darkened corridors of the station, intent on finding the power supply. Along the way, they discovered a body dressed as a mercenary, apparently working for a resource smuggling syndicate. Oddly, the man had drowned, a baffling discovery, given that the station's radiation levels were normal. Growing more suspicious of the government's motives, Song suggested conducting an autopsy on the mercenary to assess the potential dangers ahead, but Captain Han ordered the group to continue. Eventually, they reached the main hub, restored the power, and activated the air filtration system. They soon discovered restricted areas on the station map, supposedly sealed off due to radiation, but their sensors indicated otherwise. The team split into 3 groups to search the storage areas. Han's team pried open a door to find the bodies of the previous crew, all of whom had died in mysterious circumstances after the stations shut down. Bloodstains and handprints on the walls indicated they had tried to escape, but none had survived. Song's team, meanwhile, detected an unusual biosignature in Storage 3. Chief Gong went to investigate while Song headed to the infirmary to review medical records. Upon returning, she found Lee dead, pinned to the ceiling by a mysterious entity that vanished before her eyes. As the situation grew more dire, Sachin, another crew member, began experiencing disturbing symptoms. Water droplets moved beneath his skin, and hallucinations plagued his vision. His condition rapidly deteriorated, and soon, water began pouring from his mouth uncontrollably. Despite the crew's attempts to save him, Sachin drowned from within, mirroring the fate of the bodies they had discovered earlier. Realizing the mission had turned deadly, some of the crew members wanted to abort, but Han insisted they press on. He led a small group into the station's vent system, hoping to find the entity responsible for the deaths, while the rest of the team worked to restore communication. As Han and his team ventured deeper into the vents, they encountered strange symbols and unsettling drawings on the walls. Suddenly, the team's scanner picks up an unusual biosignal heading in their direction. Strangely, it seems to be originating from a different section of the facility, as it passes above them without making direct contact. Intrigued, the team attempts to follow the signal's path and soon finds themselves standing before a locked door. At that very moment, they receive a call from the crew members stationed at the main hub, informing them that they've made some progress with the communication systems. Deciding it's best to regroup, the team turns back. Meanwhile, Sachin's body is brought to the infirmary, where Dr. Hong begins the autopsy. Dr. Song attempts to access the station's medical records, but finds them encrypted. She turns her focus to collecting tissue samples from the bodies scattered throughout the facility. While working, she comes across a corpse that momentarily shocks her. It bears a striking resemblance to her sister. Upon closer inspection, she realizes it's a different woman who happens to share her sister's surname. Disturbed, Song returns to the infirmary just as Dr. Hong reveals her findings. Sachin's body was completely filled with water from the inside, with no signs of external injury. Song notes that the other deceased crew members displayed similar symptoms. When Song tests the tissue samples, she makes a startling discovery. The previous crew were all in perfect health when they died, showing no signs of infection by any known virus or bacteria. However, an analysis of Sachin's blood reveals an unusual layer of unknown material. Back at the main hub, Captain Han is briefed that the team needs to repair the digital systems. The usual method would involve taking the elevator, but it's out of order, requiring someone to make the dangerous descent manually. Han volunteers for the task. Before he departs, Song shares her theory. The mysterious entity that killed Lee didn't harm her and seems to have an intimate knowledge of the facility's layout. She believes it could be a survivor, but Han remains skeptical. Song and Dr. Hong later examine the water Sachin vomited. To their shock, it's completely distilled. Song speculates that the water itself might be an extraterrestrial virus, potentially linked to the drought on Earth. It seems the water isn't airborne, suggesting something happened 5 years ago that caused the contamination to spread among the previous crew. At the chasm, Han carefully begins his descent to reach the damaged unit. Out of nowhere, the elevator starts moving on its own, and the system's controls fail to stop it. Han barely manages to avoid disaster as the elevator disconnects his rope and crashes into the station, briefly knocking out the power. When the team lowers a new rope, Han asks them to drop the entire thing, as the elevator is now free-falling. Thinking quickly, he hooks the rope to a nearby structure and dodges the elevator again, but his suit takes damage in the process, compromising his oxygen supply. In a brief hallucination, Han sees his daughter back on Earth, sick and frail. Determined to complete the mission, he presses forward and successfully repairs the unit, allowing the crew to reboot the system before he collapses. They manage to save him in time, but the communication systems remain down. Oddly, though the station's computer systems are fully operational, they detect no signal. However, a new signal appears, this time from storage 3. When they investigate, they find the room empty except for Lee's body. Upon further inspection, they uncover an old communicator, revealing that Lee was actually a rogue agent. Using his communicator, the team finally reestablishes contact with Director Choi at the SAA. Han informs her of all the strange events, but he grows suspicious when Choi seems unsurprised by his report. He requests the codes to access restricted areas, suspecting she knows more than she's letting on. Meanwhile, Song continues exploring the facility and eventually comes across the door bearing the strange symbol she's been searching for. Unfortunately, it remains locked, and she returns to the lab to conduct further tests. Dropping a sample of blood into the vomited water, Song is horrified when it rapidly multiplies. She and the team immediately use extinguishers to freeze the droplets, confirming that the water can only reproduce as long as it's within a living host. Rushing to inform Han, Song accuses him of withholding critical information. A flashback reveals that Kim and Choi had briefed Han on the true nature of the mission before their departure. Song's sister, Won Kyung, had discovered water on the moon, leading to the construction of the Belhai Station for research. Han admits he kept this secret to protect the crew from potential traitors like Lee. However, Song argues that the lunar water is lethal, responsible for the deaths of the previous crew, and that the government is suppressing this information to commercialize the water without regard for the dangers. Privately, Song confides in Han that her sister wanted her involved in this mission. Han reluctantly agrees to give her the access codes. Together, they return to the door with a strange symbol, disable their body cams, and open the hatch. Inside, they find a tunnel covered in lush plants, something impossible to sustain on the moon. Bringing the rest of the crew, they descend into the hidden area and discover multiple storage rooms filled with plant life. They realize this section of the station is not on any of the official maps. In one storage room, they find a control room with several sample capsules, one of which is broken, allowing the plants to spread. As they begin collecting the intact capsules, Han spots movement among the vines. Suddenly, a figure tears off Yi-Won's arm in a brutal harm, seizing a capsule. Sun fires at the figure, forcing it to drop the sample, and it retreats into the vines. When the team approaches, the figure reappears, moving swiftly and agilely through the foliage like an animal. It's only after a stray bullet bursts a nearby pipe that the creature falls, allowing the crew to catch a glimpse of it. To their astonishment, it's a young girl with reptilian eyes and a strange growth on her jaw. Startled by their approach, the girl flees through an upper tunnel, knocking out E2 in her escape. The team races to lock the hatch, but they are too late. The water from the broken sample has already made contact with E1's blood, causing it to multiply rapidly. In a desperate bid, they grab the sample briefcase and rush to the infirmary to treat E2. While operating on E2, Ryu, one of the crew members, sends a secret message through an extra communicator, revealing he has secured a sample. He receives orders to eliminate the rest of the crew. As the team regroups, Song theorizes that the girl is trying to prevent them from taking the lunar water. Han contacts Choi to inform her that the intruder is a young girl, but Choi coldly orders her elimination. After the call, Choi is shown looking at an old photograph of herself with the same girl from many years ago. Han authorizes Song and Dr. Hong to venture deeper into the mysterious tunnel to uncover more information, while he heads back to Storage 3. As he navigates the vents, Han discovers evidence of the girl's movements and follows a trail of blood. His men, following a parallel path, stumble into another section of the facility not listed on the station's blueprints. There, they find more bodies and continue tracking the blood trail. In the tunnel, Song confesses to Hong that she wasn't aware her sister was stationed on the moon until after her death. She regrets not answering the one call her sister made before the tragedy. As they gain access to the facility's database, they're shocked to find all the data has been wiped clean. Returning to the infirmary, Song and Hong catch Ryu attempting to steal the samples. When Song confronts him, Ryu pulls a fire weapon, but before he can fire the weapon, the girl reappears at the door. Ryu fires at the girl, but she evades his shots and leaps at him. incapacitating him. The crew watches in stunned silence as the girl cautiously approaches Song. Song, realizing the girl means no harm, places a sample capsule on the ground as a peace offering. The girl reaches for it, but Ryu destroys the capsule with a single shot. As the girl collapses, Song notices the gill-like structures on her face twitching. Before anyone can stop her, the girl escapes once more into the depths of the station. After Song carefully secures the remaining capsules, she turns to the crew and firmly states that the water cannot harm the girl. Some members of the team, skeptical and fearful, suggest eliminating her, but Song vehemently opposes this, emphasizing that the girl represents their only hope for saving humanity. Meanwhile, Han contacts Kim, who confirms that Choi was the one responsible for shutting down the station. He adds that not everyone at the Space and Aeronautics Agency, SAA, was in agreement with that decision. Kim declines to divulge further details, instead urging Han to collaborate with Song in uncovering the truth. As Kim exits his office, he is greeted by chaos. Rioters have broken through a storage wall, and a frenzied crowd is looting the water supply. Ryu, working in the shadows, sends a message requesting backup forces. His contact, an American, calls, instructing him to unalive everyone and head to Gate 7. Ryu gathers all the capsules and slips out, unaware that E2 has regained consciousness and witnessed everything. E2 attempts to follow him, but Ryu reacts quickly, unaliving him and erasing all evidence of his actions. Back with Han, the crew devises a plan to lure the girl out and capture her alive. Using the scanner, they locate her position. Song takes a central position in a corridor, holding a sample in her hand. The girl emerges from the vents, cautiously approaching the sample as Song places it down and slowly steps away. Han seizes the moment, shutting the first gate and dragging Song out to close the second. The girl tries to flee, but her leg becomes trapped in the door. Despite her fear, Song rushes to help, and as the girl bites her in panic, Song notices a tag on her neck that reads, Luna 073. Addressing her by this name, Song watches as the girl breaks down in tears. Han sedates Luna, allowing Song to comfort her. Suddenly, Ryu remotely triggers the closure of all the gates from the main terminal. Luna, terrified, scrambles to escape through a vent. Song, clutching the sample, follows her just in time as the gate shuts, separating her from the rest of the crew. Dr. Hong, trapped in the infirmary, discovers E2's body in the freezer and informs the others. Sun barely makes it through an entrance before another gate falls. Meanwhile, Han and Gong maneuver through several doors before they, too, are forced to take the vents. Inside the vents, Song is disoriented, her map malfunctioning and her communications down. Luna, however, patiently waits for her and guides her through the facility. After navigating the labyrinthine corridors, they arrive at an office Luna has transformed into her personal sanctuary. The walls are covered in drawings, and there are capsules and photos of the previous crew, including one of Song's sister, Won Kyung. Song shares a piece of candy with Luna, who falls asleep. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, Song finds the missing data brick and connects it to a computer. She watches footage of the previous crew conducting a water response test, in which lunar water was introduced to a fish, causing the tank to fill with water, but the fish survived. Song also views another video titled Luna, and she is horrified to discover that the previous crew performed genetic experiments on human clones. Each failed Luna was replaced with a new one, and the current girl is the 73rd version, the only survivor. The next video is from her sister, Won Kyung, explaining that the experiments were meant to save humanity, though she felt ashamed of the unethical methods. Determined to help Luna, Song injects her with a water sample, instantly healing her wounds. At the same time, Dr. Hong, still exploring the facility, stumbles upon a storage area filled with hundreds of Luna clones, all suspended in bags. Startled, she screams when a hand touches her shoulder, but it's only Han. Together, they find a door that leads them near the control room, but they must go through the vents to access it. Meanwhile, Sun reaches the command center, only to be greeted by Ryu, fire weapon in hand. A struggle ensues between the two men, and although Sun temporarily gains the upper hand, Ryu manages to fire his weapon twice. As Sun falls next to a suitcase, he grabs a sample before being shot once more. The capsule slips from his grasp and breaks, causing the water to multiply when it comes into contact with his blood. Sun hallucinates a starfish before vomiting torrents of water and eventually drowning to death. Ryu tries to activate the air filtration system but is met with a warning about an anomaly in the pressure system caused by the spreading water in the plant rooms. Ignoring the alert, he opens the filtration system, allowing the water to expand further. As Han and Hong drop into the control room, they find Sun's lifeless body, but Ryu has vanished. Han opens all the gates, unintentionally giving the water more space to grow. Meanwhile, Gong, still in the vents, locates Luna's hideout and prepares to fire his weapon at her. Song intervenes, stepping between them. Gong informs Han, who orders him to bring both Song and Luna to the main hub. Han finally tracks down Ryu, and a vicious fight breaks out. During their struggle, the fire weapon goes off several times, creating holes in the ceiling. Han eventually gains the upper hand and attempts to unalive Ryu, but Ryu escapes, dropping his communicator in the process. At that moment, the filtration system collapses under the strain and water bursts from the vents, leaking out of the base and freezing upon contact with the cold lunar surface. The water begins to flood the hallways, creating a barrier between Han and Ryu, allowing Ryu to slip away. A flashback reveals the events of 5 years ago. The crew of Belhai Station were carrying out their duties when the alarm blared, signaling an emergency evacuation. As they fled, the lunar water came into contact with a small seed on the floor, causing it to rapidly grow into a plant. Some crew members were blocked from escaping by guards, who fired on them to prevent their passage before sealing the gates. In the present, the station is rapidly flooding. The crew regroups in the medical bay, discussing their next steps. Suddenly, Song begins feeling unwell and locks herself in a nearby room. Fearing she's infected, she vomits water and, as she loses consciousness, experiences a vision of herself drowning. However, memories of her sister give her the strength to fight back, and she awakens in the infirmary. Dr. Hung theorizes that Luna's bite infused her with antibodies. Han and Gong examine Ryu's communicator and discover messages that confirm the SAA rescue ship has detected a second spacecraft approaching the station. Song, however, is more concerned about Luna's fate. Kim informs her that Luna will be taken to the Ministry of National Defense for further experimentation. Song refuses to allow the lunar water to return to Earth. Han reveals that he asked Kim to rally other officials against Choi, but Kim admits that no one was willing to defy her due to her influence. Song proposes that they take Luna to the International Institute of Space Biology, a neutral station where they can buy time to come up with a better plan. Meanwhile, Ryu, now hallucinating from his infection, wanders the station, haunted by visions of the people he's killed. The water continues to leak through the walls and corridors. Han manages to gain Luna's trust, thanks to a sticker his daughter placed on his badge. He attaches a tracker to her ankle for safety. As the crew begins making their way to the exit, Luna suddenly panics and runs in the opposite direction, hearing the water flooding the hallway beneath them. The crew follows her just in time, narrowly avoiding the rising water. As vent lids pop open and water pours in, the crew rushes to Gate 7 and seals it behind them. There, they find a delirious Ryu, who fires his weapon into the air, weeping as he confesses to the deaths he caused 5 years ago, including closing the gate that sealed the fate of several scientists. With the water threatening to break through, Gong fired his weapon at Ryu several times, though Ryu manages to return fire. The crew quickly brings down another gate, halting the water just in time. As Ryu vomits watery blood and dies, the team retrieves his samples and heads to the airlock. Gong, gravely injured, receives Han's help in donning his suit, but despite Han's efforts, Gong succumbs to his wounds. Once the rest of the crew is suited up, Han attempts to initiate depressurization but finds the system unresponsive. Ignoring Song's pleas, Han exits to manually activate the lever. Just as the water surges into the area, Han succeeds, sacrificing himself in the process. Song and Dr. Hong notice that Luna has already exited the station without a suit. Both women hurriedly escape as the water breaks through the final gate and freezes upon exposure to the lunar atmosphere. Outside, they find Luna watching Earth, seemingly unbothered by the lack of oxygen. Nearby, Han's body is deposited by the frozen water. Luna approaches him, trying to return the badge, but Han dies, calling out for his daughter. Finally, a rescue shuttle arrives to pick up the survivors. And that brings us to the end of this intense and thrilling space survival story. Project Silence masterfully blends suspense, science fiction, and emotional depth, leaving us questioning not only the dangers of space, but also humanity's role in manipulating nature. From the breathtaking visuals of the moon's desolate landscape to the moral dilemmas faced by the crew, this movie packs a punch at every turn. What did you think of the film? Were you captivated by the eerie atmosphere and the mystery behind Luna? Or did the ending leave you wanting more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on more epic movie breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another journey into the unknown.